Black Friday always brought noise before sunrise. Employees rushed in with coffee, customers lined up at the door, and the store hummed with the kind of pressure only a holiday sale could create. I had managed those mornings for years without complaint. I knew every corner of the building and every rhythm of the day. Yet that morning carried a different weight. My boss walked in already smiling, the kind of smile that warned everyone he planned to entertain himself at someone's expense. He waited until the lobby filled before beginning his show. He clapped loudly to get attention, then pointed at me with an exaggerated flourish. He told the crowd they should appreciate dedication, especially from someone who was clearly past their professional prime. A ripple of laughter passed through the line. Some people looked away, embarrassed. Others smiled politely. My boss enjoyed every second, pleased to play the comedian while using my age as his punchline. I stood still, not shaken, only surprised at how freely he exposed his character. There is a moment in life when humiliation no longer wounds. It informs. As he continued talking, my attention drifted from his voice to the keys in my pocket. I felt the shape of each one and thought of the quiet meetings I had been attending for months. He believed he controlled me because he signed my paycheck. He never considered that I was signing something with far more influence. The building around us already belonged to a new future. He simply did not know it. The crowd kept laughing, unaware that his own stage was preparing to close. That morning was not the end of my dignity. It was the final step in a plan he had unknowingly inspired. While he performed, I counted the hours before everything shifted. Silence became my first tool the day he tried to belittle me. Many wondered why I held my tongue, why I never pushed back when he raised his voice or dismissed my ideas. They did not understand that patience sharpens with age. Silence protects energy. Silence buys time. Above all, silence reveals people. I allowed him to believe he had the upper hand because his confidence made him careless. Every insult exposed a weakness. Every joke told me where he stood and what he feared. While he performed for others, I observed the structure he depended on. I tracked his habits, the hours he arrived, the hours he escaped early, and the meetings he avoided. I noticed the vendors who greeted him warmly and the ones who rolled their eyes when he walked away. I learned which suppliers tolerated him only because the building carried value. I listened to conversations in the break room, where employees whispered about broken agreements, missed payments, and last-minute orders that tested patience. There were nights when I stayed late under the pretense of reorganizing shelves, but I was studying the building. I counted the number of tenants above us. I memorized the fire exits, the storage rooms, and the forgotten corners no one visited. I learned that the company did not own the walls that surrounded us. It simply occupied space that someone else controlled. That discovery did not frighten me. It focused me. He believed calmness meant defeat. He believed age meant limitation. Yet every quiet moment he mocked became another step in a strategy he never suspected. I built my advantage slowly, from documents he never requested to meetings he never noticed. Nothing loud, nothing rushed. A future shaped by patience rather than ego. By the time he realized silence had its own power, the ground beneath him had already shifted. Paperwork rarely draws attention in a busy workplace. Files move from desk to desk and signatures appear without thought. Executives rely on assistants to summarize details, and assistants rely on routines that no one questions. That pattern created the perfect space for what I discovered. Hidden deep in the lease renewal package was a clause that seemed ordinary on the surface, but carried enormous weight. It stated that the building could shift ownership if the current leaseholder transferred rights through a certified process. The company assumed the landlord would remain the same forever. I knew permanence was an illusion. I requested copies of every related document and spent evenings studying each page. I needed clarity, not speed. The more I read, the more I understood why no one else noticed the opportunity. The company occupied the space but never controlled it. The true authority belonged to the leaseholder, and that role rested in the hands of a quiet trust that had grown inactive over the years. I contacted the trustees, presented the required forms, and followed the exact procedure outlined in the clause. Nothing secret, nothing rushed. simply a lawful transition that ensured the trust transferred its rights to a new entity under my direction. By the time the transfer was complete, the company still believed the building belonged to the previous owner. They never checked the registry because they never imagined a change was possible. I let the paperwork settle quietly, allowing months to pass without mention. Patience protected every step, and my age helped more than any disguise. People saw experience, but never suspected intention. When executives rushed through documents, convinced that routine guaranteed safety, I paid attention to every sentence. The leverage they ignored had already become mine. Their confidence built the path, and my patience secured the ground beneath them. Everything they overlooked became the quiet foundation for a future they never learned how to control. Black Friday arrived again with the same early darkness and cold air, but the atmosphere around the store felt strangely still. Employees gathered at the entrance, expecting the usual rush. They carried clipboards, headsets, and the nervous energy that came from managing the biggest sale of the year. Yet the glass doors remained shut. No lights flickered inside. No registers hummed. Everyone waited for the manager to appear with keys that no longer opened anything. Customers formed a growing crowd in the parking lot. Some knocked on the doors while others checked their phones searching for an announcement that did not exist. Confusion replaced excitement as the minutes passed. The staff called supervisors who had no explanation. Delivery trucks circled the building twice before leaving in frustration. Every detail of the morning revealed how unprepared the company was for one simple truth. Their access had ended at midnight. Inside the lease office, the file containing the expired agreement rested untouched. The request for renewal had been sent weeks earlier, but I had declined it through proper channels. There was no argument. There was only procedure. That silence became the force that shaped the morning. While the crowd outside grew restless, I sat in my living room with a warm cup of tea and watched the clock. I knew exactly when my phone would ring. My boss finally called, his voice trembling with anger rather than authority. He demanded answers, insisted on urgency, and attempted to remind me of my position. I responded with the same calm tone he once mistook for weakness. I repeated the terms he had never read and the deadline he had ignored. The silence that followed told me he finally understood what had happened. Last year, he used me for amusement. This year, the building answered for every moment he believed he held control. Power rarely fades quietly. After the locked doors of Black Friday, my boss discovered how quickly certainty can collapse. The morning after the chaos, he called again with a tone I had never heard from him. The sharpness was gone. The volume was gone. Only caution remained. He spoke slowly as if choosing each word with care, trying to rebuild a bridge he had burned in public. I listened without interrupting because his behavior told a story more revealing than any apology. Later that week, formal messages began arriving. They were written as professional requests, but their intention was clear. He wanted stability. He wanted reassurance. Most of all, he wanted to regain control of a situation he no longer understood. He suggested a private meeting at a quiet restaurant. He mentioned adjustments to my position and hinted at numbers meant to sound generous. Every attempt carried the same belief that money could rewrite memory. He misread what mattered. People assume age softens expectation. In truth, it sharpens clarity. I had reached a point where I valued calm afternoons more than dramatic victories. I had no desire to watch him beg or tremble. I wanted distance. I wanted finality. His offers felt like decorations placed over a structure already broken. Each message pushed me further from any possibility of reconciliation. I sent brief responses, always polite, always firm, allowing no doorway back into my time. The moment that settled everything came during his final call. His voice cracked when he asked what I wanted. I realized I wanted nothing at all. Closure had already arrived the morning. He stood outside a building he could no longer enter. That image stayed with him long after the crowd disappeared. Watching him understand that authority without respect dissolves on its own gave me a quiet satisfaction. I did not celebrate. I simply moved on, carrying a peace he could never grant to me. My resignation took place on a calm weekday morning when the building felt strangely weightless. I handed my letter to the regional director and left without waiting for a reaction. No crowd stood nearby, and no one asked for an explanation. I wanted the moment to remain simple, a closing gesture that belonged only to me. As I walked through the quiet aisles, I felt every memory settle into its place. Years of commitment had passed inside those walls. I had managed holidays, comforted nervous new hires, guided customers, and kept calm during storms that shook the entire team. Yet the space felt cleared, as if it had been waiting for a different story. He had once marched through these rooms with an air of certainty, believing authority flowed only from his voice. Now the silence revealed how thin that certainty had always been. After my resignation, I returned home with a sense of release. I did not seek celebration. I wanted distance. In the weeks that followed, the company struggled to recover from the Black Friday collapse. Meetings became chaotic, and deadlines failed to align. The staff noticed the shift long before leadership did. The foundation he claimed to control had never truly belonged to him. Every decision he made came from assumptions that no longer protected him. The final turn arrived quietly. Human resources reviewed complaints that had been ignored for years. Vendors reported unpaid balances. Supervisors shared concerns about erratic orders. Security monitored his conduct after several incidents raised alarms. One afternoon, he was asked to leave the premises. There were no raised voices. Only a formal escort walking him through the same hallways he once claimed as his. The system had moved at its own pace and corrected the imbalance he created. I did not watch the moment unfold. I was already building a life beyond that place, guided by clarity earned through patience and experience. Fear does not always show itself in loud reactions. Sometimes it appears in the quiet moments after a person realizes they misjudged someone entirely. In the weeks following his removal, my former boss tried to rebuild his confidence, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer walked with the same certainty. He no longer spoke with the same force. He had encountered a truth that unsettled him more than any legal document ever could. The loss of the building was physical. The loss of superiority was spiritual. He had spent years believing control came from volume, pressure, and intimidation. He assumed age softened ambition, and that experience meant resistance to change. When the events unfolded, he understood that genuine power moves patiently, not loudly. He replayed every moment when he mocked my silence, never imagining that silence had been working against him. The realization that someone he dismissed had anticipated his every step created a fear he could not explain to anyone. People like him do not fear consequences. They fear exposure. They fear learning that their authority depended on the obedience of others, not on their own strength. When the truth struck him, it dismantled the image he had built for himself. He tried to rationalize what happened, telling colleagues that unexpected conditions disrupted the renewal. Yet he knew the root of the collapse rested in something deeper. Someone he underestimated had seen further ahead. This understanding followed him everywhere. It stayed with him in meetings when he hesitated before speaking. It stayed with him at home when he replayed conversations that once seemed insignificant. It stayed with him each time he realized how easily he could have avoided the downfall if he had respected the people who worked beside him. The real fear came from recognizing that dominance is temporary, but foresight is permanent. That truth stays longer than any judgment or penalty because it forces a person to confront who they truly are when the performance ends. Reaching a certain stage in life teaches lessons that ambition alone cannot provide. Experience becomes a form of clarity, and clarity becomes a form of protection. Many people waste energy trying to prove themselves to those who have already decided not to see them. With time, you learn that validation is not a path to strength.
Strategy is. Positioning is.
Choosing where to stand and when to move carries more influence than any attempt to raise your voice. There will always be people who underestimate you because of age or calmness. They assume patience means surrender and composure means limitation. What they fail to understand is that years of navigating crises, disappointments, and reinventions build a quieter form of intelligence. You no longer respond to disrespect with anger. You respond with preparation. You respond with steps that align your future rather than soothe your ego. The story of this journey is not about revenge. It is about choosing control in a world that often rewards noise. When someone tries to diminish you, observe them. Listen to what they reveal about themselves. Notice what they ignore. Let their assumptions work in your favor. People who depend on performance rarely prepare for outcomes they cannot predict. They leave openings. They overlook details. They forget that others are watching. The most powerful decisions you will ever make often happen without an audience. They happen in the quiet hours when you review documents, protect your peace, and place your energy where it matters. When you act from intention rather than emotion, the results unfold naturally. You do not force a reckoning. You allow the structure around the situation to speak. For every professional over 50, remember that your strength now comes from deliberate choices. You have nothing to prove. You have only to position yourself so that when others reveal who they are, you are already standing exactly where you need to be.